Industrializing Southeast Asian countries are very energy-hungry. Cheap energy, mainly from coal, has helped them maintain competitiveness in international trade. Governments have supported this with subsidies on fossil fuels. So these policies, among other effects, act like subsidies on exports. However, every subsidy must be financed somehow. As a result, at the broadest scale, every subsidy is also a tax of some form. Furthermore, fossil fuel subsidies in developing countries are typically regressive. In a 20-country survey, for each dollar spent on fossil fuel subsidies, the poorest household quintile was found to get only 7 cents, while the richest household quintile gets 43 cents on average. In Indonesia, the poorest quintile of households gets only 2 cents of each dollar spent on gasoline subsidies and 9 cents for every dollar spent on kerosene subsidies. But, might subsidy removal without compensation lead to increased poverty? This means that fossil fuel subsidies may advance SDGs on some fronts but could retard progress on others. What is the solution? Maybe to use some subsidy savings for compensation and on investments in activities that directly benefit the poor. Another policy instrument that may be helpful is carbon taxes. Carbon taxes and fossil fuel subsidy reductions are almost the same things, except that carbon taxes directly burden polluters. The rationale for carbon taxes is as follows. Burning fossil fuels produces a negative externality, so the social cost of fossil fuel combustion is higher than the private cost. A carbon tax is calibrated to the difference between these. As with subsidies, public finance is important. A carbon tax with or without reimbursement gives very different results. Revenue recycling, or returning the fiscal benefit from the carbon tax, can restore incomes and profits. Carbon taxes in individual small countries won't make much difference to climate change. But they will help offset some of the differential climate change impacts on poorer households. These graphs show the predicted impact of a carbon tax in Indonesia accompanied by an equivalent cut in the commodity tax rate. The results show that poorer households are the biggest beneficiaries of this set of policies. Several SDGs address forms of sustainable growth. These include Goal 11 of Sustainable Cities, Goal 14 of Life Below Water, and Goal 15 of Life on Land. Many targets of these SDGs aspire to the joint goals of economic growth, inclusive growth, and preservation or restoration of environmental and natural resource assets. As we see in every area of economic life, to reach more than one policy goal almost always requires more than one policy instrument. Trade can enrich nations but may also create incentives to deplete or degrade environmental assets. If acted upon, these contribute scale effects associated with economic growth, as discussed in Module 8.3. Once again, we see that in order to capture gains from trade and also protect the environment, more than one policy instrument must be deployed. Merely opening to trade can create an environmental race to the bottom. Other measures are needed to ensure that the use of environmental assets is compatible with social norms. In exceptional cases, a single policy instrument may help achieve more than one policy target, for example, growth together with enhanced environmental protection. But more generally, the environmental benefits of trade are likely to be incidental and indirect, for example, through income growth, rather than direct influence over the use of resources or environmental assets. Income growth is likely to produce greater demand for a clean and sustainable environment and calls for policy measures to promote these. This is an idea embodied in the so-called environmental Kuznets curve. This idea posits that as income grows, environmental damages first increase along with income and then grow increasingly slowly, or might even decrease, as incomes get progressively higher. But the main key to this changing relationship is a mechanism that gives consumers an effective voice in the policy process. Without this, corruption and rent-seeking, and unresolved externalities will ensure that environmental degradation continues. Thank you for listening. Please review the reference materials for this module in the reading list to extend your knowledge.